The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in the show and do not necessarily represent the views of DerryCam, the Town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates. Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ass. So, we are still kind of breaking down the local elections here in the area. Last week we had now former town councilor Brian Chiricello and newly minted school board member Karen Randon. And again, I just want to thank former councilor Chiricello for his service. Again, 18 years as a town councilor, 10 years as a state representative, 4 years as a county commissioner. That man did quite a bit for this town and the state. So we're really indebted to him here in Derry, and I hope he does something again soon. But anyway, we're going to do the same thing we did last week, but we're going to do the Londonderry version, and we're having some of my favorite Londonderry people on. So we have the husband-wife duo of town councilor Shawn Faber and Sarah Meier on the budget committee. So introduce yourself. Start whoever.
So I'm Shawn Faber. I'm on the town council in Londonderry. I've been on there a year now. Just been an exciting time and really excited to keep doing it.
I'm Sarah Meier, and I've been on the budget committee for Londonderry for 2 years now, and I got 1 year left.
Yeah, and we had you on when you were a candidate for town
Yes.
council. Yeah, so you're on. So
Yes.
so we had our elections the same day. I'm a little jealous because you guys got double the turnout we got. Do you know how many voters you had?
It was about somewhere between 3,900 and 4,200. So it was good for a town election. Nothing compared to the 18,000 some we got in November.
Yeah, we had 1,975 here, with about 21,000 registered voters in town.
And you were the biggest polling place in the state too, if I'm correct on that.
In America.
Oh.
Guinness Book of World Records. And Londonderry's actually second, so.
Oh.
Really?
I did not know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that either until someone came on the show and pointed that out.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
but yeah, you had some interesting results, especially with the town council. So
Yeah. I mean, we had John Farrell, who's been on the town council over 10 years. He was the incumbent. Chad Franz, the chair, chose not to rerun, but we had John Farrell had placed third, and the top two seats won. So we had Deb Paul, who runs the Londonderry Times, also was a town councilor. I think she left in 2023 was when her term ended, and then we had a newcomer, Dan Bouchard, who was longtime school officer. A lot of people around town know him as Officer Dan, and he's new to all of this. He's spoken frequently at public comment, but it's just, it's exciting to see a citizen get out there and really put himself out. And he was surprised to win, but he's a good guy, and I look forward to working with him.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that Londonderry does differently than Derry only has a school deliberative session. You have a town and a school deliberative session. So on your ballot, you got to vote on town warrant articles, and we didn't. So what was the breakdown with that?
That's interesting. I had no idea.
There were 35 warrant articles. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, I believe. No. Yes, 3 failed. It was the rail trail failed.
No, I thought that passed.
Oh, sorry, the rail trail passed. Sorry, the new signs for Londonderry failed. We had some traffic officers, both a choice for 1 and 2, both those failed, and then there was a full-time librarian that failed. Otherwise, everything else passed on that end. On the school end, our school budget, or our school building warrant article failed because it didn't reach the 60% threshold, so it got about 55. That one it would include full-day kindergarten, and it also had a combining of the SAU office with what was our elementary school, and moving the elementary school kids into the elementary schools that they would be attending within a year. So it was an interesting concept. We had just failed in a $34 million warrant article for a new kindergarten. And so they wanted to do something creative, and I give Bob Slater and the rest of the school board credit. They really took the message from the voters, went back and came up with a creative option. The voters didn't approve that one, so they're going to have to go back to the drawing board and think creatively again.
And long term, it would have saved the town money. So it's kind of unfortunate that it didn't pass.
So your school tax cap didn't pass.
So that did pass.
Okay.
But it was advisory only. And I had talked to Bob Slater, the chair of the school board there, about that. And he says they're going to take an actual look at it. It's when you get to tax caps, he brought up some good points that I hadn't thought of because, being an average citizen, sometimes you're like, tax caps, yes, we got to control this and slow the rate of it. But if it's written wrong, like all legislation, you can get people that game the system to do it. If it's written in such a way that they go, oh, we'll overspend here, so the next year that adds on to our cap, you can start creating an incentive to spend in areas you wouldn't spend. So if they're going to implement one, I would rather have them take the time and get everything right so it does as it's intended.
Derry, the town side, is under a tax cap, but our school district isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone on the school board, with the exception of one or two, would support a tax cap
Interesting.
on themselves. Yeah, so we did here in Derry I mentioned it last episode, and we had Karen on, but we did gain a seat on the school board. We now have a couple good fighters for the taxpayers, which I'm really excited about. And I'm really interested to see what our school board's going to do this year. The warrant articles all passed here, so they approved about $25 million for renovations for our schools, which is about $10 million more than I would have wanted.
Yeah.
But it passed. I think it needed 60, and I think it got like 61 or 62%. So it barely passed, but it did pass. The budget passed also. I did get to work on this budget, so I was really excited to see it passed because I think it was a good budget. We came under default, which I don't think has been done in a long time with our school districts. So I was happy that passed. And we have 5 new school board members. Well, 2 that are actually new, 2 that were acting members but are now full members, and 1 incumbent that was reelected. Brenda Willis was reelected. I don't even know how many terms she's been on, but since the early 2000s, I'm very happy she's back on. I'm happy she ran again. The 2 acting members that were appointed last year, Jenna Paradise and Jen Thoreau, both won. And we have 2 newcomers, Jamie Carew and Karen Rand. So that's 5 spots out of 7 because we had 2 resignations.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned last episode, with our town council, we had 3 spots. Charlie Foote ran unopposed for District 2. He won. Randall Chase ran unopposed for District 4. He won. And in a race of 4 people, Michelle Moget won for the councilor at large. So we had an interesting dynamic with our people here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So tell me about your first budget season. What was it like?
It was different for me. I got on through a loophole.
Yes.
I definitely shouldn't be on there, but because Derry's school board decided they wanted to be unique and they didn't like public input, they invented their own form of budget committee, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a school fiscal advisory committee. The school board appoints the members. You have to fill out an application and apply. Because there's no other town in the state that does this, there's no state law about it. So whatever the school district policy says is basically the law that governs it.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came up with this idea about 10 years ago, the only requirement that they put was that you be a resident of Derry. So I realized I am eligible to be on there because they did not specify that you have to be an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And they had absolutely no basis to deny me. It was still a 6-1 vote because one of them felt I shouldn't be on there. I don't know why, but I was on there, and it was interesting. I served with a very diverse group of people, some very well-known people in town, such as Representative Jody Nelson, Tom Carden, who's been in town a long time, Steve Barry, who's spoken at tons of meetings, and a bunch of people that I'd never met before. So it was interesting to see their perspectives, and we really had a mix of all points of view. And the school board was surprisingly receptive, which I did not think they would be.
Yeah.
When we only really vote once, and it's not really a vote because the fiscal advisory committee doesn't vote on anything. They're advisory. And I think that's because the school board doesn't like it when people tell them what to do because they think they're right all the time. But we still did a straw poll at the end with our under default budget, and it was like a 14-2 vote. It
Wow.
was a good experience. I was very happy with it.
Good.
So, what's the budget process like in Londonderry? Because we don't have a budget committee. The town council does the budget themselves. So,
So it all starts in early November, and all the town departments present to us their ideas for their budget. And it's just ideas, don't really get into financials, but that's when we're also presented with a huge budget book. And that's when we get all the numbers and stuff. So once we know there's stories behind their budget, then we can take it home and kind of analyze, okay, well, does this align? And then we can really analyze line by line and year over year, is it increasing or decreasing, and why, and get into specifics. And then it comes back a week or two later, and then we talk to all departments again and just ask them more questions, more clarifying questions, and that's pretty much about it. It just kind of goes into warrant articles from there, and kind of finagling it with town council and working with town council to make sure that is the amount on the warrant article, is it accurate? Should it be more? Should it be less? And then the town council votes on it if it should even move forward to be a warrant article, and also on the amount. So that's basically it. But the school process is pretty much the same. All the schools come and all the departments come, present to us what their ideas are, and just go over it piece by piece. And there's also a big, thick budget book that we get.
I got a big binder too.
Did
so
ya?
I still have that, yep.
Yep.
So what we do on the town side is that the town administrator and the chief financial officer, basically, them and their staff create the budget. And they present it to the council, and then councilors get to review it. And then they'll do like 3 or 4 special meetings usually, and they'll go like, one meeting they'll do public works, another meeting they'll do fire and police, another meeting they'll do the libraries and things like that. They usually either do that or they'll do one special like weekend meeting in the morning and just do them all at once. Takes like 5 or 6 hours.
Yep.
I guess it depends on whose chair they want to do it, whatever way. And after that, the council just votes on the budget at the end of April. So they're going to be starting that, I believe, at the next meeting. So
And does it get presented to the voters on the ballot?
the town budget does not go on the ballot.
Oh.
The town council approves it themselves.
Okay.
It's only the school district budget that goes on the ballot.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how that's legal.
It is
Different
interesting.
Town form of government.
It's
than
gotta
ours.
be,
Yeah.
okay.
I've kind of noticed since I've been involved in local stuff that all the towns do it differently.
Yeah.
I think the only town that's somewhat similar to us is Goffstown, but
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yep.
But it's just been interesting, and yeah.
Well, we hired a new town manager.
From Lebanon, and they're a city, and I thought I was familiar with city form of government, but they do some special things up there too, which was really unique, where it's interesting to see how each town runs themselves. And then even when you have we're an SB2 town too as well, but other SB2 towns run very different sometimes. So it's interesting the flexibility that's left in RSAs for towns to set things up in their charter. So
My question is do you think that this is unique to New Hampshire in general and how each town has its own process, or do you think every state is like that? I have no idea.
I think it is unique. It might be unique to New England. I'm not as familiar with how other states work, but I know, particularly in the Midwest, there's a lot of stringent laws on how town government performs. A little less local control. We in New England like our local control, and I appreciate that. It gives people diversity on where they want to live and how they want to be governed, and the ability to change it. Just because something works for Derry doesn't mean necessarily it's going to work for Londonderry, even though we just have a highway separating us for the most part.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to the fact that we're a retail politics state. Really, anyone can run for anything here and have a really good chance at winning.
Yep.
That's not the same in any other state, really.
I agree.
So we too just hired a new town administrator. We call it an administrator, not a manager. We hired Mike Fowler. He's been the public works director for a couple decades, I believe. So he's going to be kind of the co-town manager until the end of June. He's going to all the meetings, sitting next to our town administrator. Yeah, and
What's Dave's official last day then? Is it in June?
I believe it's the 30th
Okay.
of June, and then Mike Fowler starts July 1st. And it's the same with our new superintendent. We just hired a new superintendent as well. Austin Garofalo's retiring on the same day, June 30th. And we hired Michael T. Flynn. He's the current superintendent of Hopkinton. He's never been in the Derry district before. So I'm excited to have a new face there, especially since we've had some controversies over the past couple years, which I'm sure you both know about from me and from other people.
Yes.
And there's already a little bit of rumblings with the new superintendent. I won't get into it too much, but there was an incident where there was, not at Hopkinton, but at another school district, Hopkinton. There was like a soccer game, and Hopkinton was the away team at Kearsarge. And there was a sex offender there.
Oh,
And from what I heard, there was an issue of not communicating with the parents that there was an issue.
Yeah.
So, but oddly enough, that came up the day after he was hired, which leads me to believe, why didn't that come up when they announced he was a finalist weeks before he was hired?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I find timing like that kind of weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, one thing I wanted to talk about, because as you said, there's only a highway separating us.
Yeah.
And we're having a little activity on the highway.
Mhm.
So that's going to impact both towns.
Yes.
One thing that I kind of wondered when I was younger, before I got into politics, I always wondered why there wasn't an exit that went directly into Derry. There was two that went into Londonderry, one that went into Wyndham, which isn't a big town, 3 or 4 that went into Hooksett. I always wondered why Derry didn't have one that went directly into Derry. And then 4A happened, and it's going to be a big adjustment for the town, because we're going to have a lot of change.
Even technically, there is some blocks
That are Londonderry before we hit
Yeah.
Derry, but it's for all intents and purposes, that's the shortest to get directly into Derry that we'll have for an exit.
Yeah. And we're going to have a lot of construction here. Crystal Ave is going to be 6 lanes. I believe Folsom Road, where the police station and the car wash will be also.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So, similar to how our towns had a residential boom in the 90s, I think we're about to have another commercial boom. Well, not another boom, but this time a commercial boom. And I think that'll be the biggest struggle for Londonderry and Derry over the next couple of years.
So Londonderry's in a unique situation where
31% of our taxes come from commercial and 69% come from residential. So we actually have an issue where too much of the burden is on the residential taxpayers. And so it's really about growing the town in that area. I mean, that area is under, we call it a PUD, which is it's a special designation that gives them certain rights under planning if they're of a certain size. That a lot of that falls in with Woodmont, I'm sure you're familiar with. But how we develop that area, we've got to make sure we get the right businesses in there and that are a benefit to the town. But we've really got to help that tax base out, because with the residentials bearing that much burden, it's not the best right now as far as that goes. And I'd like to see that improve and that ratio get more balanced.
And kind of going to the state level a little, but it also takes away some of the complaints that a certain side has about schools. It's gonna that would directly lower taxes.
yeah,
Yeah.
if done right, and
It's all about that is when we get stuff, I'm on the planning board too, when we get stuff in front of the planning board, I mean, we get the ratio, right now it's at 0.17 kids per residential unit. But when you have something like commercial or industrial, those don't come with children living in them. to add on the burden of the school, but they do pay towards the tax rate. So that's also another difference when you're looking at how things go into a town in planning.
Yeah, so what's coming up next for Londonderry? What's going to be exciting within the town council and budget committee?
I think, I mean, this year's going to be a different year. It's going to be about just finding our way. You know, a lot of the institutional knowledge and the way things were done before is gone from the council. So it's us kind of finding what's the next path for this town. We're in a unique spot in the state where we're between Manchester and Derry, and we've got an airport there, and we've got some open land, but we don't have a ton of open land. I mean, the full build out of Londonderry is 32,000 people if we, reach full build out. So it's guiding us along in that next phase to see what's this town going to look like, as it's growing, and keeping the residential look and feel. I'm also on the master plan committee, and our survey came back. The number one thing on the survey was maintaining the low tax rate. The number two thing on the survey was maintaining the look and feel of Londonderry. There is a different feel when we cross over into, especially the downtown area of Derry, versus there's not really a downtown area, I'd call it, of Londonderry. So it's definitely different in that aspect, and we want to preserve what the residents want as much as possible.
Yeah, I always kind of point to Londonderry and Derry as a good example of residential versus commercial. Mm-hmm. We have commercial, but we don't have like huge plazas like on Nashua Road in Londonderry. And that's another thing. It came up on our town council candidate forums by Michelle Moget, who is now a town councilor, and I'm curious what you guys think. Should Derry/Londonderry have like a destination spot? Kind of like Tuscan Village in Salem or Market Street in Lynnfield, Massachusetts, if you've ever heard of that. But there's not really a place in this like section of the state, unless you go to Salem or Manchester, that people can just kind of go and hang out.
I think Derry is a little different than Londonderry in that your rural is more on the east side, and then on the west side is a lot of where the commercial is. Where in Londonderry, it's been my understanding of the people when they tried to plan and figure out how the town was going to work. A lot of the development is around the town on the outside and on the outskirts, up by the airport in certain areas of town. I think Londonderry, and we'll find this out as we go through the master plan process. Londonderry is unique in how it looks. It doesn't look like it has a downtown like Amherst, where you've got that beautiful New England look. It's got a little bit of a different spread out feel where it feels more rural, even though we're a sizable town for this state. I don't know that the residents particularly want a town center like that, where everything's bunched together, where everyone comes. I mean, we have our town common where we have Old Home Day and town halls there in the Reverend Morrison Meeting House and some other good things about town and space for us all to gather. But I don't know that space has to be a bunch of buildings and other things associated with it. I think we do a good job of keeping that around, keeping our green space and keeping our trees so it looks and maintains that different feel that it's always had.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think it's an interesting concept, though, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot more centralized spaces in New England, particularly New Hampshire. Because I think the no sales tax and all that, it's going to make businesses want to come here.
There are some interesting concepts around in the Woodmont PUD, like one particular one. There's village style housing, if you're familiar with what that is, that people have been talking about with that area, where that's where you have the houses are almost faced inward, where you have an open space in the middle, and then people's front doors go out. So your little block of neighbors, you're there, and then it's surrounded by trees. It's got kind of a pathway and a road to get there, but it's very unique in development. And it seems to be, like, listening to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, housing diversity is a big thing that people are talking about right now, where people want different options on how to live and where to live. Young people have a difficult time. I don't know how it is in Derry, but young people in Londonderry have a particular time finding anywhere. The concept of a starter home does not exist in Londonderry. So there's a lot of high school students that have contacted me, or people in their early 20s who are having challenges with wanting to remain in town. They work in town, or they went to high school there and they love it, or they want to live near their parents, and it's just not easily a possibility the way things are right now.
I don't think it's a possibility anywhere in Rockingham County, really.
Really?
or Hillsborough County, or southern New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I think if you want an affordable house, you got to go north at this point.
Well, and it's one of those things where,
And this is the debate, and I'm not sure where I finally fall on this, but some people want to do some things at the state level, because there's some communities, like we've built in Londonderry a lot of workforce housing and those kind of things, and there's been other communities that haven't. And some of these laws, if there's not a level playing field, those of us who have done our fair share, like Londonderry, get dumped on. And those other communities who are trying not to do anything can be very protectionist. And so the housing burden shouldn't fall irregularly to places like Londonderry and not in the rest of the state. But where I have a challenge with that is challenging local control. So it's a debate that's going on at the State House right now, and housing is, as Kellyanne said, a statewide problem, and they're just trying to figure out the right solutions for it. And hopefully it's something that's level for all our towns, so some don't do and others do.
All right, so we're just about out of time, so any closing statement you have, go ahead.
I'll let you go
Yeah,
first.
okay, fine. I don't know, I think this has been very interesting. Thank you for having us. Yeah, I don't know, I love Londonderry. That's pretty much about it.
Yeah, it's our home. It's a great place, willing to fight and work for it and try to make it the best place it can be, and keep working for all the residents, because that's what this is all about. And again, thank you for having us on. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for coming on. And yeah, both our towns got to work together. We're
Absolutely.
like you said, there's only a highway dividing us.
Yes.
We're neighbors.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ass. Thank you for watching.